Welcome to Shows What You Know, your television podcast. Oh, and it is that time. It's that time of year, that new Stranger Things time. I am Jim Scampoli.
I'm Jacob Rose, and you are all missing out. Oh my god, I did not know that was happening. I thought about that. I was like, we have a red logo, they have a red logo. If you're on the podcast, you're missing out. If you're anywhere but the Shows What You Know YouTube, you're missing out because you did not just see our own fabulous Shows What You Know fucking intro for the Stranger Things, Strangers What You Know shows. Oh, you need to go and check it out, everyone. And of course, we also own Stranger Thingspodcast.com, which we always forget. We're the Stranger Things podcast. Clearly, this is the season. We're in the season of Stranger Things and Shows What You Know. Oh, I'm so happy to be back.
You know what? You're right. I always do forget that we have we do own StrangerThingsPodcast.com. So even if you're trying to sell your friend on a television podcast, don't even bother telling them anything else. Be like, oh, dude, you got to check out StrangerThingsPodcast.com because it goes to us. We should just,
I mean, I'm sure I can redo our regular intro where I'm just, we are StrangerThingsPodcast.com. We'll always watch Stranger Things, and I mean, we would be way more popular that way. We do, unfortunately, we like other TV shows too. They're just not, they're not Stranger Things, so I guess we gotta redo our format here. Luckily, as I said, it's the season, to be jolly, season 2, so we're gonna go through, we're gonna have 3 episodes on it. Each one of our episodes will be discussing 3 episodes of Stranger Things. It's so beautiful. It's like all these numbers add up, like in some weird Will Byers sketch on the wall here with all the numbers and the lights. Yes, Stranger Things. It was such a love story last year. I don't know how much you recall, but this was really the first show we were getting into where we were like, I don't know, we were so blown away by Stranger Things. One of the first, and also one of the main motivations for even starting this television discussion podcast. So, as I said, great to be back.
Yes, that's right. And as you said, this particular episode that we're doing, we will be discussing episodes 1 through 3 of Stranger Things 2. And yeah, Stranger Things was kind of one of the main drives for us to start this show in the summer of 2016. Who could forget? And yeah, well, also of note, we'll be spoiler free at this point. We'll let you know once we get into spoilers. We're going to talk some basic thoughts first. And on that, I would like to talk about, yes, like you mentioned, it was a love story, us and Stranger Things. And that, I mean, and it was hard to gauge that initially because we're just going off a trailer. You never know. I mean, we've been burned by shows before. Stranger Things did not do that. But then Stranger Things was one of those things that blew up and then quickly had quite a maybe not quite a backlash because it's still a pretty big show, but it started to turn really fast with a lot of people, whether it be that they decided they didn't like it, or they're quick to tell you how it was just, rehash of old shit and a ripoff. At least from what I gauged, from what I started to see, it went quickly from positivity to a lot of people saying not so nice things.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar to Rick and Morty as well, that effect when something gets so popular that like all you hear about is Stranger Things, and there's been so much when I go to youtube.com, the website, like all the recommended things are just Stranger Things. That's all of it. And like that, I think that has an effect on some people of like, meh, like counterculture, like, meh, and I am one of those people. So I'm not saying they're necessarily wrong usually. And also, we are also known on this show to be very cautious about new things. And a season 2 is almost like worse than, like, we're all probably even more so because it's a Netflix show, so it's such a sudden thing of like, oh, it's so great, and then as we have discussed on the show, we all just forget about it forever, and then it's like, you made me feel emotions one time, there's no way you can make me feel emotions again, you're gonna fuck it up this time, I bet. I mean, that's not maybe not the most healthy outlook on life, but as you said, we've been burned before. How did you enter into season 2? Were you full of hype or trepidation?
I mean, I was definitely excited. I was super excited. And yeah, like you mentioned, and we've talked about this in the past, because here we are right now, we're recording this on the Sunday after it went up on Friday or Thursday night at midnight for all the diehards. So
Hmm.
we are in like peak Stranger Things territory. But as we've learned from Netflix shows or just shows that kind of all go up in one blast, this peak territory is probably going to be over and done with in only a matter of days.
Yeah.
At least that's what it's been like in the past. Maybe this will be different, but it's almost like you got to get while the getting's good. But yeah, initially coming in, I was very excited. I will say the first few episodes, again, we're not getting into spoilers yet. It wasn't that I thought they were bad, but it wasn't hooking me yet. And
Hmm.
to their defense, coming at this show with a season 2, because I'm pretty sure we talked about it a bit last year that we said if this show came back, we would have preferred an anthology. We would have preferred, even though we love these characters, I think we both agreed that we would have preferred more like same tone and vibe, but maybe a new set of people.
I think we did, but also I believe I was saying something like, "Well, True Detective too, though." So, like that, it can also go the other way.
Yes, and I started thinking about that a bit just because, to their defense, they don't have that same. And I watched some of the post show that they've been doing, and the Duffer Brothers were on that. And in there, they even said like, "Look, we don't have the same hook that we had
Yeah,
between season 1, introducing a new, like a new world, and also having the hook of Will's missing, and that's like the hook through the whole season.
yeah,
So you don't have that element of surprise, and you're kind of trying to introduce a new mystery or hook or something." And there was two things uh, going through my mind watching the first few episodes. Is just that I was so happy and so excited to be back with these characters and the vibe of this show, because it still has that, like, obviously with the synths and the music and the way it's shot and the time period, it feels the most natural of any like media that tries to capture that.
yeah,
It does feel like it could have just been made then and it came out now.
yeah,
It does, it has more of an authenticity than a lot of projects that try to go for the same like Amblin 80s Stephen King vibe. So all that works really well. But then I was just kind of like, oh, nothing's really happening, or nothing's really like grabbing me as far as like plot or story. I'm glad,
yeah.
like, oh, there's Dustin and Lucas and Mike and Will. This is great. Oh, there's Nancy. There's Jonathan. Oh, whatever. But
Yeah.
I was just kind of like that. I was just kind of like, oh, I'm glad it's back, but there wasn't a lot grabbing me as far as the story. How about you?
Well, I feel like they are kind of stuck building on the breadcrumbs they left last year, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because some of the breadcrumbs are these amazing characters, but then it's like they like you said, they had this great hook, and this is spoilers for season 1. They got the kid back. So like if someone else vanishes, that's not going to be the same or as interesting, and we've already met monsters, so it's not going to be like as creepy slowly discovering this stuff. And I guess I was kind of concerned that it would just be more of the same. And in a way, it kind of is. It's kind of like when you're playing a video game and you beat one really tough boss, and then next level is like, but it's bigger now. That's not. I haven't actually finished the season, so don't take that as me like saying anything about what actually happens in the show. But that's the feeling I got anyway. That they were kind of doing that. Plus, instead of having one really strong hook, it feels like they had like almost 3 different like hook bits of supernatural activity going on, and sure they all come together, I'm sure, but it's not going to be as strong.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree. And um, they introduced a few new characters, and to varying degrees of success. Some outright failures, I would say, uh,
Okay.
as far as new characters are concerned. Just because I didn't quite see the need for it in a weird way. Like, I guess it. I don't want to get into too much yet, but I guess it serves some of the existing characters in weird ways, and some in natural ways, some in kind of like a cheat way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, either way, I just some of the new characters, I would say success. Some of the new characters kind of a failure. Like, don't waste my time.
Okay.
Uh, and yeah, I will say the only time I did get a little like hesitant before the show premiered, when like some of the initial trailers came out, I started wondering, like, because when you see them in like their Ghostbusters outfits, even though
Mm-hmm.
it ends up being great in the show, when I
Yeah.
see it in the trailer, I'm like, oh, is it just Reference City? Like, here we go again. Like, is this Ernest Cline's Armada now?
Yeah.
Another
Yeah,
80s
I mean, we've
crap?
talked a lot about how references are really hard to do, and that's even in, I'm sure, in our coverage of Stranger Things season 1, that's the thing that just was amazing about it, that they managed to do this really nice intertextuality, to use a fancy word for it, where they actually pull from things, and as I'm sure more than one video essayist has called it, they sampled the 80s rather than just ripped it off. Like they remixed it into something that felt new, which was really well done. I'm gonna wait to ask you which characters were successes and which were failures. I felt like obviously this has always been a very stylistic show, or like it has a strong style, I guess is the way to put it. But I felt that in the first few episodes, bits were jarring for me on that front, specifically the audio, mostly the audio. I don't know if that stood out to you at all, but for me, there were points where I was so distracted by how they chose to do their sound effects. Like, for example, a cool kid puts his foot down after getting out of the car, and the sound effect is literally like "boom," and then like the teacher puts down a plastic brain seriously like 30 seconds later on like the desk, and the sound then is like similar, it's even bigger, it's like boom of like putting that down, and every scene opens with a dramatic sound effect, and it's like supposed to build this mood, but they do it literally all the time. And that's mostly about the audio, also a little bit in the visual and the way they've directed it. At least this feeling mostly has gone away as I watch more of it. But in the first episode, there's like the shot of the class, and all the students just look to the side as one, and the expressions on their faces, and it feels a bit cartoony, bits of it, rather than like 80s like style, like using a strong style. It even felt non-realistic to a point where the creepiness and everything doesn't feel as real. It feels more Scooby-Doo-ish in those moments, not overall, but for those bits. I don't know if you picked up on any of that.
It didn't really jump out to me, but now that you mention it, I definitely I do remember, and I know what you're talking about. So
Mm-hmm.
I could totally see that. I did watch like the first two at like 12:30 at night,
Yeah.
um, and I had to work at 6. But I was like, oh, Stranger Things, I need to watch these. So
Yeah.
I may have not have picked up on some of those things in the early episodes. Um, I will say I did think the first shot, like the first few shots when the show kicks back in, I was impressed with how confident it comes off, like almost immediately, and in a way like it kind of should.
Yeah.
I won't get too much into specifics, but just like it's like a camera like swooping over in a car, and then people coming out of a building, and everything's going and everything's fast, and like let's fucking do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, hell yeah, Duffer Brothers. They took all that praise, and they're like, all right, I'm gonna show you what we got. We got even more. Let's do this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will say not. I didn't pick up on some of your specifics that you're calling out, but there's a few. I'm all for mixing tones and like having some humor with your horror or with your sci-fi and all that. And typically, this show does it really well. But there's a couple segments or like character storylines that try to do that, and it did not work at all for me.
Yeah, okay. another very, very specific thing that I'm going to be vague about since we're not doing any spoilers right now. But sometimes when the characters talk, they will cut away to what they're talking about. They'll like do little flashbacks. Like when someone's telling another character about the thing that just happened, they'll do little cuts from that. And I might get into more specifics on why that doesn't work for me. In most of the cases they do it, but basically it feels like they're, instead of letting the scene speak for itself, they're jumping back and showing you like it's a freaking previously on, like we're not on Netflix watching this all the way through, because it doesn't. Like my argument would be, it makes sense if we're in the head of that character and they're literally having like flashbacks to these things, but that is not how they play it. At least not all the time. They just kind of cut it in to add tension, and I feel they should be building tension in more of a creepy way rather than a flashy way, because that comes off as action action story rather than, Stephen King creepy build up, which is what is better for this
They
show.
do it. I have finished the season. I know you haven't, and I might even be talking about something different than you are, but they do it quite a bit towards the in the back half, in a weird way, as like reminders. And sometimes they don't need to do that. It's just a weird, like they don't quite, they're not having faith in us, the audience, to understand like, or to remember things that
Yeah.
happen, especially in a show like this where it's going to be binged for the most part. For the most part, you're going to be watching these 9 episodes. Some people in the course of a day, some people in the course of like a week tops. So you don't really have to worry about being like, remember in episode 2, because it's not like here we are 2 months later and oh yeah. I mean, they do it a bit with some season 1 stuff as well, where they cut back to some season 1. And even then, I don't think you quite need it, but at least I might understand it more. But yeah, it's a really bizarre choice in some of these cases. And maybe if they didn't do it as much, I wouldn't have noticed it as much as or like cared about it as much. But I feel like they started laying it on pretty thick, especially in the back half.
Yeah, I think we might be talking about the same specific parts, so we'll leave that for later. But yeah, I also felt like, why are you trying to explain this to us instead of making just a good scene in itself right now? That was a feeling I got from it. But I mean, hey, it's Stranger Things, and I don't want to be someone who says like, "Hey, it's Game of Thrones. It can't be bad." Like that's not what you guys know that that's not what we do here at Shows What You Know. Just look at our coverage of Game of Thrones. And I did, like, as you said, I've not finished the season. I've seen the first 6, and I'm positive. I knew going in I wasn't gonna have like the same roller coaster of emotions probably as last year, but you were describing this familiarity of coming back to the characters and not a lot happening, and I think they get away with that mostly because, like in season 1, I think a lot of us were just thinking, I wish I could hang out with these characters, man. This is great. I just want to be one of these kids and go on little adventures. And that's what they're doing for a lot of the show. So I also feel like they're lacking as strong of a driving force in the beginning, but I enjoyed it. I'm enjoying it a lot right now, guys.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, I'd only watched the first few, and then I started hearing some middling reviews or kind of thoughts on where the show was going, especially for people further than me. So I don't know if that helped, but I don't know. It completely got me by the end. Like any of the stuff I had at the beginning, it was just more so I was just kind of thinking like, all right, what's going on? Are things going to start amping up here or not? And believe me, like you said, these characters are great, so I don't mind hanging out with them for a bit. So it wasn't that much of a problem. But by the end, I like loved it completely. I guess maybe I'm spoiling our show on where we're at. Of course, I'm definitely going to have some nitpicks and some criticisms, but it completely got me back. And I don't know, maybe in a weird way it helped because like a mutual friend of ours was talking to me, and he was ahead, and it seemed like he kind of watched it like all in a day. And if you're starting off kind of not digging it or not in it, maybe the best idea isn't to just like soldier on and binge the whole thing, because you're already kind of in the mindset of like, I'm not digging this. So maybe it helped that I watched a couple episodes, then kind of came back to it like a day and a half later, and then I was like, rejuvenated, ready to go. So I mean, maybe that's a downside of some of this binge watching that we all love to do. I mean, because that could work both ways. That could work where you're just like, this is great, I'm loving this so much. So then some of the lesser than episodes won't stick out as much because you're already amped up and you're like, hey, that wasn't great, but hey, on to the next. But then if you're in that mindset of like, do I like this anymore? Let's watch another one. Like, still don't like it. Let's watch another one. Still not.
Yeah. That's kind of like if you're in a relationship and you're like, I'm not sure about this. Let's go on a month-long cruise, just be in a small cabin together and never leave each other's side. That'll fix us right up. Maybe you need something. Maybe you need some counseling before you take it in bites. But yeah, as we said, I haven't finished it. I don't have that much. Like I also seen people be kind of down on it, and like I'm worried. I have worries at this point where I'm at. Not worries of like, oh, it's so bad. I like worries of like, I'm liking it. Is it good? Are we too worried? I think we're too anxious as people. Should we just enjoy things?
Yeah. Well, no. But see, the reason why we're worried is because we enjoy things. We enjoy things so much that we get worried we're not going to enjoy things. But
right, society, man.
I think we've talked in generals quite a bit. Maybe we should just break it down and kind of hone in on just these first 3 episodes.
Yeah, let's do that. I did just want to say I think I would have. I don't usually binge through whole seasons. Usually I'll watch a little bit and then like really might get into it and watch quite a lot, but usually never like in a day or anything. And this time I watched the first few episodes after getting home from work, and couldn't watch any more that day, or maybe it was before going to work. But either way, today I watched several more after coming from a Halloween party on the other side of the country right now. And by the way, Halloween did not exist here in 1984. That's more of your American cultural hegemony. Is that a word? Hegemony?
So
taking over the world.
Halloween didn't exist in 1984 Sweden, you're telling me.
I'm telling you, we have a thing called All Saints Day where we go and light candles on graves, and that's it. No candy.
Well, the movie Halloween came out in like 1977 or something like that.
Yeah, so, but we don't get it until 10 years later. So, and even then,
what the hell were they wondering when they tried to release the movie? 1978. So I was like, what the fuck were Swedes thinking when Halloween came out? The movie.
Well, we can be aware of something and not celebrate it. But yeah. Okay, well, it is here now anyway. I went as a spider boy, influenced by this show where I was dressed up in spider webs with spiders all over me. So I did that yesterday on the other side of the country. Then I came back and I watched 3 episodes of Stranger Things, sleep deprived, and I was like, this is the best. And I don't want to say I'm not in my most critical mindset, but it was just washing over me at that point. So, hey, Stranger Things, everyone, check it out. I'm sure you got the point by now that it's a good show. If you didn't watch season 1, yeah, that's all. You start there and then work up to here, and then listen to the rest because we're about to get into spoilers.
Well, real quick, just from the chat, Bone Machines in the chat. It's funny because Halloween's now popular in Japan too. They never even had it 5 years ago. So
yeah,
Halloween sweeping the nation. But as you said, we're getting into the spoilers for episodes 1 through 3. Spoilers. For season 2, episodes 1 through 3.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
okay, so yeah, do you want to start?
Well, like I was saying, when it kicks in with this, I guess robbery. I don't want to say much more. From when I first saw the episode, I was like, oh, there's some sort of robbery going on, and there's a getaway car, and then people come running out of a building, and it's people we don't know. There's a guy with a mohawk, and there's a high-speed chase, and we're like, oh, 008. And I think we were talking about this. I mean, it's not the most like. Didn't take a genius to be like, she's 11. What about 1 through 10?
We cracked the code. We have a whole theory about it, that there are numbers before 11. Yeah, exactly. We're introduced to 008, or I guess 8 we'd call her, who does illusions, as far as we can tell from this first scene, where she makes the bridge collapse, and then the cops all crash, but then the bridge didn't collapse. Oh, gosh, and they got away. And, yeah. That's about that for that scene. I liked it. It was, like you said, it was kind of setting setting high stakes and setting like, hey, guess what? We're starting with a car chase this time, and a pretty well put together one.
Yes, yeah, and it's a nice kind of like, oh, open up the world a bit, even for just a small teensy little peek. And then we're kind of back in Hawkins. Is Hawkins? Yeah, Hawkins,
Yeah,
Indiana.
yeah.
And we got our gang going to the arcade. Now, um, this is kind of like, I mean, maybe we'll be jumping around a bit from these episodes because it's like when we're first with our kids, they're all happy and like, what we remember. But Mike takes quite a back seat through a lot of these episodes. I guess because Mike's main thing is 11, and of course, where we were left off last season, 11 was in the Upside Down because
Yeah.
she took the Demogorgon. Now the thing is, and this isn't just Stranger Things. This is like every TV show because TV shows obviously love to end on these like high stakes cliffhangers on a season. But then all that really like we got all excited about it. But as an avid TV watcher, even though I still get caught up in the finale moments, you have to remember that all that means is that the beginning of the next season is just going to be spending time unwinding those cliffhangers and making them lower stakes than you
Yeah.
actually thought they were.
Yeah.
And maybe, I hadn't even thought of this till talking it out now. And maybe that's where kind of my like enthusiasm starts going away when I'm watching these first few episodes, because it's all about just unraveling what they did. And in a weird way, kind of showing that, and I can't fault them for this, but kind of showing that there probably wasn't a grand plan of what happened. It's just kind of like, hey, for all we know, this is going to be our one shot. Let's make one season. We'll leave some threads open. But otherwise, if we don't make a season 2, no big deal. Because it really, like, as far as the 11 stuff, very anticlimactic for me.
Yeah.
I know we're jumping around, but because it sidelines Mike for a bit, but then there's not even like a cool backstory to it, I would say.
Yeah, I mean that I agree. Mike was so the main character of Stranger Things, and now he is this grumpy boy. He's a little grumpy boy now, who's acting out. And like we start with the first thing with the kids is they're searching for pennies, and so this is kind of an interesting way of introducing characters because they all have different strategies for finding their pennies. So we get to find out something about the characters there in just a tiny little micro cosm type way where Dustin is searching the couch and Lucas has mowed someone's lawn and gotten some money from that. And then Mike steals money from his sister, which doesn't feel like the Mike I know. So in that way, I guess it's good to set up this whole grumpy boy persona that he has. But he doesn't really break out of it for a little while there. And even when things start happening, he's so kind of like even the other characters forget he's there at some points, I feel. But yeah, they're going to the arcade to play some Dragon's Lair straight out of an Anita Sarkeesian video.
Yes.
And it's kind of weird to have Will back. He's so short. We haven't actually seen all these characters together.
Yes, well, and I kind of picked this up from watching some of the Netflix has this like Stranger Things, Beyond Stranger Things, like post show, and they do it in such a weird way because it's like it's not like they're going episode by episode. They want you to watch the whole season. Then when the season's done, the show comes in. They have like 7 episodes, but just discussing it as a whole.
Oh.
But they're showing some of their audition tapes, and everyone's like, oh, I'm Finn Wolfhard. I'm 13 years old. And he starts auditioning. And they're all like 12 or 13, except the actor that plays Will, it's like, hi, I'm blah, 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 and I'm 10. so
Shit.
He's like 2 or 3 years younger than everyone else. So I guess that kind of plays into why he looks like just like a little scrawny kid compared to them. And especially like we were talking about with those flashbacks, when they flash back to season 1, it's really in your face how much older these kids are, even though they're not really. It's just that puberty kicks in and really fucking changes a kid up, eh?
Yeah, and I mean that's almost part of like that's really interesting too because that's like how we don't have character development on a lot of TV shows these days, and then we actually literally get to see people grow older. Of course, there's some shows where we've seen that, notably Game of Thrones. But yeah, it's one season of difference, 1 year, and as you said, it's very different. And then Will's kind of in the back, like a head shorter than everyone else. Um,
Everyone
yeah,
else
so
except Will. Well, but that's what's jarring with that, and I guess it kind of only points mostly to Duncan. Maybe to Lucas a little bit when he wears his fatigue headband, because it's like Duncan's like a cartoon character. He wears the same costume, even though when you see a flashback, he's like kind of way older, but he's still wearing like his silly hat and kind of the same clothes. So
yeah.
it's, to me, it's a little bit more jarring with him in comparison to other characters. But yeah, but like you said, Will's just a scrawny, like clear, like a preschool kid with these high school kids hanging out.
Yeah, yeah. I did not notice. Did not notice that, but yeah. So they're in the arcade, and they notice that there's a new high score, Mad Max, which is the name of the episode, I think. That's this new character that we're meeting a little bit later there, and immediately becomes very interesting to our boys Duncan and Lucas. So was Max one of the characters you liked or didn't like who came in?
Dislike Max and Billy. Is Billy her brother? I believe
Uh,
it is Billy.
Sounds right. Yes.
Um, just be not so much that like you can't have these characters and you can't have like yeah, you know, another female character that kind of plays up sort of a love triangle, like wedge between two of the characters. Well, because especially like Lucas and Duncan were kind of in the season one, they were like arguing a bit and like snipping at each other as well. So it kind of gives you more of an excuse to do that again. But I don't know, the way that it came on, it doesn't come off as natural to me the way they try to wedge this Max character in with the gang.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, I'm not going to get into specifics or anything. I just don't feel like there's much of a payoff to this character, really.
Okay. As far as like okay, here's why I liked Max, or one of the reasons. I liked having a character come in who's on the outside, who actually gets a role in the show because all the other characters are in it at this point, and then you kind of have no choice but to just go deeper into the fantasy, and you get more disconnected from the realism and the reality. And I'm not saying necessarily that they did it perfectly, but this character coming in as an outside person who slowly sort of weasels into the group, I mean, that kind of added something to the fantastical elements, because otherwise it'll go to a level where we're just fucking elves fighting orcs, and there's no, we kind of forget that we're supposed to be in reality. So that's one of the functions I feel she filled pretty well of coming in as an outsider. I also liked her as an actor. I think she did a good job, and I didn't mind. I liked her. I liked Max.
Well, but the thing I don't like is how it has to be like she's kick ass. She's better than them at video games. She knows that she knows they're watching them. She's kick ass on a skateboard. She's a tough ass chick. Like
Jim, are you aware that you're on the wrong side of history right now? Because all girls are cool.
I mean, that's fine, but it's like, who cares right now? Like, why do we need this character to be the best who's a nobody? Like, it feels like she would be the main character of a show. Like, this would be some other show that stars her and her brother, and then it's about her figuring out weird things by meeting these kids. Except she's a side character, and we already know the story, so it plays out like really. To me, it's just like a weird rehash.
Okay.
But to an audience that already knows what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, the way you described it is interesting because it would. I mean, usually the main character is the new kid in town. That's the plot of every young adult novel ever written. So you got a point there of like, who are these mysterious boys? But they would be a few years older and way sexier. And then there would be a love triangle. I mean, I get, now that you say it, hey, we could make a fortune on this. Let's just age them up a bit.
I mean, I guess my thing is, it's not so much I have anything against this character and like this character coming into the group. I guess it's more so the time spent. I feel like there's a lot of time spent that doesn't need to be there. And especially
Hmm.
it's played out early as kind of mysterious. It's like, who's her brother? Why are they acting the way they are, and what's going on? What kind of secret do they have potentially? But then like midway through, it's just more like, oh no, it's this and this.
Yeah, it's
Unless
just
maybe
regular.
they're planting seeds for something in the future, but I highly doubt it. Uh
But that was part of why I liked that. I mean, uh, not to say that that was your main argument, but I see what you're saying. But that was also why I liked having something that like she didn't turn out to have like a monster growing inside her or anything like that.
but then why do we need to play up this really like kind of threatening relationship between her and her stepbrother?
Well, I haven't finished it, but I guess I mean,
I'm just saying where you're at, like where you're
yeah.
at, because
I
I
mean, I
think
guess it's a
it's a
simplistic character motivation, but I get it as far as like her being the way she is kind of influenced a lot by that. I would say that the brother is more of a character that didn't work so great for me,
I
at
agree.
least as far as this beginning here,
I do
where
agree because I'm sorry,
yeah,
I'm cutting you off.
that's fine. Oh, I was just gonna say he like you were saying that some characters feel like they come in just to fill a function, and I feel that more towards him, where she actually has a personality and acts really great, and and like introduces something new to the group, even if it can feel contrived a little bit. I still liked what she added to the group, and then her brother's just the worst character, and here's the main thing that's the worst part about it. He's supposed to be all sexy. He looks like fucking shit. He has the worst hair I've ever seen on a human being in my life. And I know it was the 80s, but even then, like, have an afro or something. Like, it's the 80s. Use it. Use it to your advantage. Don't be this scrub. If girls look at you like, who is that? Don't have that hair.
I completely agree with you, and yes, I do. I know it sounds like I really hate the Max character, and to some degrees I do, but the ends justify the means. I don't like when all's said and done and she's in the group, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Or she's like with the group or whatever. It's just more so the weird introduction and kind of it felt so forced. But you're right, to her brother's character, Billy, it's very clear they're like, we redeemed Steve, so we need a new
Yeah.
Steve. So let's like make Steve times a million. And
Yes.
then I assume it has to be a joke, like that's their joke, because he looks like a nerd to me. Like when he shows up, he looks like a nerd, and maybe it's because I grew up in the 80s, but in 84 I was still just like a toddler, so I didn't understand that nerds were cool and people thought it was awesome. Because yeah, his introduction is like, look at his ass, look at this guy, he's so great. Um,
Yeah.
and I guess I'm sure they're playing that up. That's kind of part of the goof, but it's introduced in a goofy way to me that I'm like, why am I supposed to be afraid of this guy?
Here's
And
how much I thought he was a nerd when he drove up there and they got out of the car. I was like, wow, Jonathan got a great car. Who's that girl with Jonathan? Where's Will? I thought it was him. And then I was like, weird new haircut. And I was like, wait, what's up with his face? Did he get plastic surgery to look even worse? Uh, but yeah,
yeah, so but yeah, the Billy character really bad. Um, and like the idea, they even spoke on this, and this doesn't really spoil anything. They just kind of talked about how they wanted to have a similar like human type threat, so and kind of fill the role of Steve. Like they basically kind of say this, and that's what
yeah,
they do, but it doesn't feel like these things just don't feel natural to me when they play out in the show. The way the show has it play out doesn't feel organic, so it just becomes distracting to me like all the time
yeah,
when these characters show up and we're spending time with them. Because even like when we're spending time out of the show to just be with these characters, when there are like so many better characters happening. And don't get me wrong, I hate the Nancy character as well, but hey, at least she was in season 1.
yeah.
So get that
Speaking
going
of
for her.
Nancy and Steve, we do get a scene where she's going over his college essay, and I mean, Steve, I didn't predict liking him a lot more than Nancy and Jonathan and everyone else almost except who's that age. Yeah, Steve's a sweetheart, and it's almost like cartoonish. Like this bully character who comes in is almost like he's there to make us like Steve more, but you don't need to do that. I already like Steve. He hasn't done anything bad. If he did like he did some slightly dickish things in season 1, but in the end he was like fighting monsters and helping people. Like he as far as I remember anyway. So
Yeah,
he's
back
yeah.
to help. He didn't even know what was going on. He's just like,
Yeah.
monster, you say?
Yeah, he was coming in with that bat, like, what's going on? And like try to like he came in and helped everyone, and he was great. And now he's like talking about, no, I'm not gonna go to college. I'm gonna stay here to be with you because I love you so much. And Nancy's, I'm not, I don't know if I dislike her as much as you, but it is. She's kind of like, oh yeah, that's great. You know, this is a relationship I care about. Making googly eyes at every nerd that walks by, basically. Because yeah, she's still kind of hanging out with Jonathan a little bit. Hey, come to this party. Maybe you'll meet someone. We don't have sexual chemistry. Ha ha ha. Ha. So yes, that's what's going on. Winona has a new boo in the general store.
John Aston.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And
from Samwise Gamgee himself.
yeah, and I mean, not only because he's Samwise Gamgee, and you know, if I can't get somewhere, I feel like he'll carry me. Not only because of that, I do like Bob, and he's kind of this nerdy goofball, and I don't know, he's also like a normal guy coming in, and it's clear that she's like with him because he's such like the normal guy who's the most boring and bland and kind of a nerd, but he's also really likable. What did you think about him?
I ended up really loving
Yeah.
Bob Newby. And I can't blame the show for this because I don't think the creators wanted me to think this. But coming into the show Stranger Things, I can't help but in the beginning when I meet Bob Newby, I'm like, what's this guy up to? He
Yeah.
works for fucking the scientist. He's spying because it kind of would make complete sense to be some nerdy guy, but then you put yourself in the situation. You're in the buyer's house. You're keeping an eye on things. So I was probably a little too untrusting of him in the beginning because I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was like, he's just too normal.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Maybe because they play up his like normal doofus goofball character so much, but he's just is that guy, and he does it really well. This is a very much a side question, but she works in the general store. I wanted to ask you: is general store a term that's still used? Because it sounds like a name invented before advertising was invented. Because it's such a bland name. Let's go to the general store to
Yeah, no,
buy things in general?
yeah, no one says that. Maybe
Okay.
I mean, and it could just be a sign of like how big corporations have pushed out the family general store because now it's like you're just going to go to Walmart or Target or you're going to go to I mean, which you would call them like department stores.
Yeah.
But I guess a general store is like a weird combination of a department store and a convenience store.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it in Gilmore Girls. That's about the what
Yeah,
I'm.
like it's like small town shit or
Yeah,
1980 shit.
yeah, exactly. So yes, Will goes in to get tested at the science place. Still dealing with these scientists, huh? But it's okay. They're all new people. We're good now. We're not we're not bad. Why would we be bad? We replace the bad people with good people. Like me, the goofy lovable doctor. Remember how you like Bob? I'm just like that guy. I think it's really well done with the main scientist guy, how he's introduced as like a pediatric doctor who's really good at talking to this kid. He's likable, he's doing all that stuff, and even from like it's not like it's a twist when he turns out to have a darker side, but it's just an interesting and maybe kind of a given character choice, given that you can't have another weirdo like psychopath come in and like they're gonna go to him. But it introduces a nice balance with the sheriff and Will and Winona and everyone. So yeah.
Yeah, and it was kind of my own fault for not like brushing up more on where we ended because I was a little confused at first. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. They did a thing where they like kind of signed documents and made amends in a weird way with the company to keep, because Hopper was gonna help cover it up in exchange for, like, their safety or whatever, and keeping the town safe or something. So I was like, oh yeah, they made a weird compromise. It's kind of like half happy, if or something like that, whatever he
Yeah.
says.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I was a little lost at first. I was like, wait a minute, what are you doing? What is all this? But yeah, and you're right. Paul Reiser plays it really well because, he's a nice familiar face. He was on Mad About You way back in the day. He's a well-known actor, and he can play it nice and warm, but then it's like, but also down here in the lab. Yes, the lab.
Yeah.
Get the flamethrowers.
Yes. So, I mean, just going off what happened in season 1, I like the impression I got as well of the ending was they're coming to Hopper and they're like, "Hey, you need to come with us and become one of our agents." And he's like, "Screw you." And they're like, "Well, wait until you see what we have to say." And then the next time we see the sheriff, he's like leaving these Eggos out in a box in the woods. So my conclusion was he's been recruited to help make contact and kind of get 11 back to this world. Like, that seemed inevitable. It seemed like pretty cool idea that he would be recruited and then like, oh, I hate this organization. And then like, well, you can make it better if we will do it your way. This is your town, blah, blah, blah. But, that kind of halfway is what happens. They just sign it. Like, they apparently make some deal where, they come in and do checkups. And then, I mean, we're getting into episode 2 here, but he just has 11 living in his house for the whole time for a year. So that's the end of that cliffhanger.
Right, I forgot. The season 1 did end. They left it more seeming like Hopper was working with them now, and I think that's probably what their original idea was. But they're like, we'll do that here for season 2, so we'll just kind of retcon it a little bit. We don't have to do too much because it was never explicitly stated. And then yes, like the reveal basically at the end of this episode is that Hopper is with 11, and he's been hiding her. We already kind of knew, like you said, from at the end of season 1, he knew something was going on because he was leaving Eggos for her, so he knew something was happening. And this is where I get into issues because their explanation around this is so like anticlimactic and kind of boring in a way that it really showed to me that they were just going for broke to end the season, and they didn't know what they were going to do from there, which I can't blame them for. It's just there are still ways they could have made this better, because then we kind of start to see the explanation basically between like episodes 2 and 3 with these flashbacks.
Yeah.
And 11, we all knew that 11 had disappeared after fighting the Demogorgon, and we assumed she was like stuck in the Upside Down. But no, like 10 minutes later, she just kind of came out of the wall somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay.
I'm sure the camera won't focus, but I just want to show you my notes here of, says, the fact that 11 came back 5 minutes after 5 minutes in the Upside Down feels kind of anticlimactic. So, you pretty much took the words out of my mouth there. Anticlimactic is the only word that can be used to describe that, because she's supposed to be, I don't know, it's because they also play up this thing between Mike and 11, and there's this love-struck separated like puppy love of them being like trapped between different worlds, but they're just 10 minutes away the whole time, and never really that far away. She's just in the woods learning words of the day and going crazy, I assume, from being in a house for a year. So it didn't feel completely put together, but I mean I have to say I also really like the chemistry of Hopper and 11.
For sure.
They do it so well that I forgive it, but I agree that the whole premise feels kind of like, ooh, we wrote this? Ooh, what do we do now? Ooh.
Well, yeah, the ends do justify the means, but it's kind of like, even the fact that Hopper why was he leaving Eggos out there? Yeah. Because at least when the season 1 ended, I'm like, if you fill in your own gaps, like, okay, he found something, he's a detective, he's actually a really good detective. We've learned he's not just like a schlubby sheriff. Like, he's got real background. So I'm thinking something happened, but I don't know. Maybe I missed something in this show. But it's just kind of like 11. He randomly puts Eggos outside. She randomly finds them, and then somehow that's how they make the connection of like, I can find him now because he's been putting egos out here.
Well, there's that hunter who gets hit, and she takes the hunter's, or I don't know if he's a hunter, but he has a gun, and she takes the coat or whatever, and that would be enough where I feel like he could, oh, there was this Russian spy girl. Yeah, there's also this crazy guy coming in and talking about this Russian spy girl, which is not a great remake of Spy Kids, by the way, Russian Spy Kids. But yeah, I guess that makes sense. But here's the bigger issue of, yeah, he doesn't exactly work for the science department there, but he's in contact with them a lot. They are literally wiretapping everyone in town, and just because he drives further away into the woods, they just kind of don't check up on this guy or what he's doing out in the woods.
Yeah.
He would be the first guy you'd put a tail on. He's the guy you worry about if you're these scientists. If he's not part of your organization, he's probably plotting against you. So you would put a fucking little microphone in his lamp or whatever, or something, and instead never gets brought up. And can you imagine what the main scientist guy would like? Oh, we're doing this with that. If he just had 11, it's not like they're like, oh, we were so wrong. Like, they're still doing crazy experiments over there. Yeah, there may be slightly better methods, but like, it's not like they. Oh, yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and like you said, where we're at is good though. Where it is great because you have Hopper, who's a great character, and plus as we know, like, he has issues because he lost his daughter, and we have 11 who obviously has issues. She never knew her parents and had her crazy papa. So now it's like they get to have this domesticated life in secret, and he's teaching her, and she gets to watch TV, and they have a nice back and forth. So it's fine that where they are, but it's still like, it's disappointing. Like, because like off the top of my head, there's like number of like silly things that are like fake exciting that you could have done to like bridge those gaps. Like maybe have her stuck in the upside down for a little bit, have some stuff go on, and then I don't know, she gets out a different way. Not like she wanders a little bit and finds a hole, because that's the whole other thing. In season 1, they were like entrances like through a tree and like in the school, and they were just weird entrances to the upside down. But now it's kind of like, no, it's just here. It's here at the lab. Remember, that's where it happened. Don't you remember? But whatever. They're not really nitpicks, but they're also not destroying the show. But it's kind of like show logic starts to go out the window a bit, and there's obvious like tender love and care put into this show that it's kind of a bum out when some of these other things are like just kind of glossed over or skipped.
Yeah, I definitely noted the same. Like, I think a lot of it's born of the fact that she literally comes out immediately after the big climactic battle, like right where they were just before then. And I mean, I guess it makes sense that she's afraid of the government finding out about her. That adds up. But then also you're working with the government, and also, as we said, there's like so many inciting incidents of varying levels for different characters, and having her get trapped in the upside down and having Will be like halfway into the upside down, couldn't there be a thing where Mike and Will get more to do because fucking Will sees 11 in the upside down, and then they're trying to contact her? Again, I'm not saying this would necessarily have worked great. There's a lot of factors up in the air of how you're going to make this show, but it doesn't like diminish the fact that it feels kind of weird, that part. That it feels like they could have done something more, just like you were saying. But yeah, if we have her saying she's going to be halfway happy, and her and the sheriff are so cute together, so yeah, it's all fine in the end, I guess.
I'm sure that maybe there's just a lot of wishing last year that they ended more on Hopper going to the cabin at the end of season 1, and then you could see 11 was there. They were probably like, damn it, why didn't we just do that?
Yeah.
But either way, one of the great reveals of this episode, I don't know if you'd seen like the teasers or the trailers leading up to Stranger Things 2, but they loved showing that shot of like Dustin looking kind of in horror, and when he's in his Ghostbusters uniform and they're all in their Ghostbusters uniform, the camera's like kind of panning in and he's like looking. and seeing the trailers, you're like, oh shit, what's going down? Something's going down in broad daylight at school on Stranger Things. And it's great that in the show, it's just him being like, guys, no one else is wearing costumes.
That's true. That's one. It's a really good part because it, like, again, some of the realism coming in of like, oh shit, and I mean the effect of that is that their whole interaction with Max, like that's all tied to setting up the realism, the real world that they're in before fantastic things start happening. That's why part of also why I liked this whole thing of like, is she gonna come trick or treating or not, and all that stuff going on in this episode.
Well, and it's nice reminder that they're like nerds. They're nerdy kids.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of moments this season, and I guess maybe it makes sense because they saved the world a year ago. Because now Dustin is always just like swearing at people and being like, "What the fuck? Like this is bullshit, bro." Like even that, given it's another nerd at the arcade, but they're just he's an older kid and they're just like shitting on him and.
Well, they're getting up there in age. They're getting rebellious now. Plus, they saved the world, as you said.
Oh, and one other thing, and maybe this is just me because I don't eat fucking waffle desserts. I eat waffles for breakfast with syrup on them. So when 11 is eating French toast for breakfast, I'm like, she's 11. She loves Eggos. No, she has Eggos with whipped cream or whatever the fuck. I don't buy it.
This is all, I mean, look, Jim, when we watch a breakfast on TV in this country, we just kind of go with the flow because none of what you people do makes any sense to us whatsoever over here on this side of the Atlantic.
French toast for breakfast, bro?
No, I'm not saying that makes sense either, but like even having waffles that you like toast in a toaster, we did have that. I did have that one time, I think. They don't have them in the. Do they have them in the store? I don't know. I do have a waffle iron. Never use it. That's true. I mean, I'm not saying we're better. I'm just saying I don't know what's realistic here.
But
so
okay, so if you make a waffle in a waffle iron,
yeah,
are you making a dessert out of it, or are you making you just having some breakfast waffles?
Nah, that would be I put jam on it, so that would be like a naughty.
You got me. You all got me fucked up.
Look,
but either
I'm,
way,
I'm like 11 coming into this world. I don't know these flavors, okay? I don't know what goes with what. I've been in a Swedish lab all my life with just eating fucking hard bread and what else is a stereotype? Clogs.
Either way, if you're 11 who loves Eggos, you're not eating French toast with syrup. If you want her to have something else for breakfast, fine. Have fucking eggs and toast or something. But if she's gonna have something with syrup on it, it should be a goddamn Eggo waffle, not fucking French toast with syrup on it.
I mean, I'll take your word for it. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that didn't jump out at me because all of your breakfasts are like weird sorcery where you always constantly have pancakes and waffles for breakfast, which I don't. I mean, it sounds nice. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just very confusing for me. So yeah. What else happens in this episode?
Pumpkins are dying.
Oh yeah, pumpkins are dying, and we get one of many scenes where something is like it's kind of built up, and then it's a bird in the field, showing how Hopper's kind of spooked out because he goes in there expecting something bad, and then there's a bird. And I don't think that's bad in itself, but they use the same type of audio for literally everything. They do like a build up of like creepy, and then it's a scare or it's not. But that's when I was talking about a lot of the effects coming in and being kind of just over and over similar stuff. Yeah,
and I mean, it starts to feel thin. Like I know we've already been over it, but the way they dole out these 11 flashbacks, it doesn't need to be throughout 2 episodes. But whatever.
No, exactly. I was surprised in when episode 3 starts and we're still having flashbacks of like, oh, we gotta clear the cobwebs out of this cabin. Like, no, we get it. You're in a cabin in the woods.
And it's only to set up. It's fine to do it when they do these are the 3 rules, and then she breaks the rules. But like, just do that. You don't have to like trick us being like, but oh yeah, the cabin and this. Although it is great to see Hopper dancing. So yeah. I'll take that, I suppose. But anyway, episode 2. Episode 2, I don't have a lot of notes on episode 2. I know.
Well, we have the party.
Okay, and the party and trick or treating are in episode 2 as well, right? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. We have this party where Nancy and Steve goes, and like, I mean, I don't like Nancy's hard to like, but I like her as a character. Like she makes sense to me, and her getting drunk and sort of berating Steve and saying it's all bullshit is kind of heartbreaking. This is all motivated from them going to see Barb's parents, who are like the internet. They just won't let it go. They're just trying to find Barb. They're gonna sell their house and everything to get a private investigator, and that messes so much with Nancy that she just gets wasted and berates her boyfriend until he leaves. Again, like later, yeah, he's just the sweetest guy at this point. It's hard to feel a lot of sympathy for, but it makes sense. So I like it.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, this whole storyline, because this storyline basically drives Nancy and Jonathan for most of the season. And it makes sense, but I also don't feel like they would have done this. They're only servicing this comes off as just servicing the dumb Barb meme.
Mm.
And like yeah, they legit kind of fucked up and forgot about the Barb character and just kind of showed that she was dead. But I don't believe they were ever going to explore this further. But then here we are. Maybe that's why I never really gel well with what's going on when we were cutting to Nancy and to an extent Steve and then Jonathan, because it's all tied up with Barb's disappearance and how she doesn't get full closure because of a cover up that they had to do. And like on paper, yeah, it all makes sense, but I don't feel like this is what we would have done. I feel like this is just answering some garbage meme, and I don't. It's the one of the big downsides of social media when like some of your shows and entertainment have to like service garbage.
Yeah, and I mean, I haven't like hated that storyline as much, but I totally agree that there's no way like they were planning that. But I also feel like they didn't really have anything else planned either, which is kind of what we've been concluding, that they're kind of not necessarily making something that is bad or doesn't make any sense. They're just naturally following, from last season. Well, not super naturally, huh? From since they're also being influenced by the whole fandom, but they're basically just building on what was happening. So yeah, their storyline. I'm not going to speak too much about it because they don't really have time to do much about it. In these 3 episodes. I mean, in the next episode, I think the thing that happens there is that she persuades Jonathan to help her with this mission to get Barb's parents to know the truth. But yeah, I think that's about it for these first 3 episodes. I'm going to leave it until our next discussion.
And plus, I feel the thing is, I'm trying to find it now. I'm trying.
What are you trying to find?
To one extent, like yeah, they didn't have things planned, but they've been wanting to make it seem like they did, because last year, like shortly after season 1 premiered, they released what were supposed to be the episode titles of season 2. And it looks like some of them did carry over, but not all of these, because this is laid out. Episode 1, Mad Max, because this is from a report last August 2016.
Right.
Episode 1 did stay as Mad Max. Episode 2 was supposed to be called The Boy Who Came Back to Life. I believe it ended up being called, what, Trick or Treat Freak?
Yes.
Episode 3 here is called The Pumpkin Patch.
I don't think that's what it's called in the current version.
Although I guess you could see how kind of the standard ideas match up a little bit. Episode 3 is called The Spy.
But I mean, the fact that it's called the boy who came back to life, that's like, yeah, no shit. You could do anything in that episode and it would still make sense because fucking Will's in it. So, and Mad Max, hey, when like they could have made it about the movie, that could have been anything. I'm sure they probably did think, hey, we want a character called Max, but it could be also anything. Also, I didn't know, did you know that Westworld has like 7 seasons planned out? That's definitely all planned, and they all know what that is. Like, I just lie when people ask me if I know what's gonna happen in like a future story or whatever. If I'm working on something, I always say yes. You always lie about that, you because you feel like you know, but you don't really know until you write it.
You know what? The other list I was looking at is wrong. The second list, the chapter 3 is actually called The Polywog. And yeah. the initial when they announced it last year, They called episode 9 The Lost Brother. There's no Lost Brother this season, but there is an episode called The Lost Sister. So
That's true. Okay, so do you have the old list in front of you? What was number 5?
well
Or no,
number
sorry, number 4?
it went yeah, number 4 was The Palace.
Yeah, and in this version it's Will the Wise.
Aha.
I
Well,
have the
no.
I have the new ones if you have the old ones.
Okay, yeah, you have the. All right, cool. And then number 5 was called The
Fine.
Storm.
This is called Dig Dug in current version, and the storm. I mean, it's true. That stuff that came up. He kind of saw a storm in the Upside Down, but guess what? That wasn't important at all. It wasn't the monster is the important bit. Okay, he has these. We haven't even mentioned it, but he has these episodes in the Upside Down in these episodes, and he sees a big fucking monster, and that's the thing we're worried about. And he does say it's like it was a storm. Not important at all.
Well, and then
Uh,
here we go in the original list. Here we go. Episode 6 is the Pollywog.
mm,
And
okay.
episode 7 is the Secret Cabin. What was 6 and 7 on this that they finalized?
Yeah, the 6 was the spy. That's when the spy came in.
By
And then number 7 was the lost sister. Of course, we're
ah,
not going to talk about what this means because we haven't
we're
gotten
not
into
getting there yet.
spoilers, but it's
Just going on
interesting,
the
though,
title.
as far as what they planned.
And then episode 8 was the Brain.
This is the Mind Flayer. So, I mean,
They're
yeah.
kind of on path. And then this had episode 9 was the Lost Brother.
Okay. 9 is the gate here. So,
So I mean,
but-
if one lesson to be learned is when you have general ideas, don't release them to the public because a lot of things can change. It does kind of reinforce to me that they did have a general idea. I think a lot of those are still in, I guess,
Yeah.
canon or what they finalized, but clearly it's when they were finally breaking the episodes. They're like, wait, we want to do this, this, and this. I will say a small hint is that maybe I think the Lost Brother was probably still very much similar to what the Lost Sister is, but they planned it at the end and they decided to put it at episode 7 instead.
yeah,
I,
that doesn't mean anything to me, but okay.
because
Good.
I feel like it leads to what might be in the future. But either way,
Okay, I was gonna say that, like, yeah, I don't even mind that they released it and then changed it. In fact, I respect that more than them like releasing it and then like, shit, we have to call it that. How do we make it fit? Like, it's better that they do it that way. But also, I feel like if they like hired me as a consultant, like, shit, we need to build some buzz, but we don't have anything ready. I'm like, just open any D&D manual and like take a word and then like call one like Back to the Future, but or some, but like make it about no, call it like the flux capacitor, but it's like a dark flux capacitor or something. You go into the upside. Who cares? Just put some names on there.
well, you know what it kind of tells me too is I wonder if they planned on having that 11 reveal not till episode 7 because
Certainly, yeah, it looks like it, right? That's
but
what
then
I
they're
thought
like,
too.
how can we not have or even whether it be the writers or even I'm sure Netflix themselves will be like, look, everyone loves 11. You're not gonna fucking wait more than half the season to finally show us where 11 is, you fucks.
Yeah, and more importantly, because we know she's alive and gonna be in the show. Like, this is the thing of storytelling. We know that she's alive, and what you have to do is make it surprising and at the same time inevitable. Like, if Eleven's dead in episode 2, yeah, that would be a fucking twist, but it would suck. It would be a lot worse than what they actually did, even if it would have made more sense. We know she's gonna be in it. There's no way you wait that long, but maybe the reason they were planning that was they didn't know what was happening until then, or maybe she wasn't with Hopper, maybe she was somewhere else. But yeah,
Or maybe they would have played it out more where they would have had some flash. It would have played out more with just seeing her in the Upside Down,
yeah,
and then it was a reveal that she's been kept secret. Like she did get out, but she's been in hiding with Hopper. Like who knows? All speculation. Interesting to look at. I feel though.
yes,
So yeah, pumpkins are dying. We're seeing that. Our gang goes trick or treating. Bob lets them use his video camera. Bob rules, by the way, because he works at Radio Shack and he knows about electronics, and he's Mikey from the Goonies, so he's the best dude.
yeah. We are closely. Maybe the reason we were like Bob's so cool is that we're both like really into cameras and computers and shit. So that might maybe since Stranger Things is so popular, I'm sure there are a lot of people watching this like, what a nerd. That guy's such a loser. You should be with the sheriff, the cool, manly sheriff guy. I assume.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah. But I mean, yeah, they do trick or treating, and of course, the big thing at the end is Dustin, for the second time, hears a noise in that old trash can, goes and opens it, and then it just kind of cuts there on him opening the trash can and seeing that there's something weird in there.
Yeah,
What a
nice,
weird thing.
nice cliffhanger. And Will does have another episode basically where he sees the big monster, and in a way, like they're going out like it's season 2, so they got to go bigger, and they're going like Lovecraftian, but it's boring to me because it's just too big. It's kind of like, all right, if that's the thing, well, fuck these kids. You know, what are we doing here? Like, it's almost you're going too far for it to be that interesting to me.
I guess I don't mind it that it's that big because, oh yeah, I'm not going to say anything because that's in later episodes.
Yeah,
Never
well,
mind.
I'm just saying my mind state here
Sure.
in episode 2. I'm kind of like, all
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
big fucking big scorpion that's going to destroy everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're kind of taking forever, so let's get into
Yeah, episode 3. Yeah. So we got this little monster creature here. What
It's
did you feel?
here.
What?
Like Dustin has a gremlin. That's my thought. My thought is like
Okay.
this is their version of Gremlins,
Mhm.
and it doesn't get to the point where I think it's bad, but it got to the point because I swear to God, unless I'm hearing things, there's a part where it like falls off the desk or something, and they play like kind of a variation on the Gremlins theme.
Really?
And maybe I'm filling in these blanks and this isn't a real thing, but I swear to God they do. And I'm like, all right, come on, ease it in just a little bit. Ease it in just a little bit.
Mhm.
And the only other criticism I have is how they don't immediately realize that this is clearly something from the Upside Down.
Yeah, that's kind of Dustin is like he doesn't seem to care about this cat that they own in the family as far as like I love animals. But then there's this weird lizard, and I guess it jives with his whole persona of like, I'm the weird kid, my hands are all covered in warts because I like being out in the mud and touching the frogs. I guess. I mean, we haven't seen him do that, but I guess he could pull that off. I guess that makes sense. But yeah, the fact that it's like a weird creature where they literally live in a monster town of monsters who murder you and your friends and steal them to the dark place, the Upside Down in your mind where you go crazy, and they don't even seem to. Well, the other characters do, but just as far as Dustin, he's just like, I'm gonna name you Dart. You'll like Three Musketeers. So
Yeah, and okay, I guess I forgot that too because it's Gremlins and it's also the Goonies because Baby Ruth like Chunk and Sloth. They like bond over candy.
oh yeah,
I mean, again, these aren't bad because I like the way Stranger Things does it. Like you said before, it's more of a remix. And I think we said this when we talked about season 1. They're at least doing the thing we say you should do. Like when a company takes some old IP and they remake it, but they change it, and usually you're like, that would have been good. Just call it something else. Just make your thing and have it shout out to the stuff you want, like the stuff you love, but then call it something else. I mean, hell, even Star Wars is a version of that.
yes,
So they're doing that. So they're always going to get credit. It's just when they lean too hard, sometimes it's like, all right, but they're skimming, like they're taking a sharp turn to the cliff, but they're not going off. They're just kind of skimming the edge. So don't take these as negative criticisms. It's just I got to point it out.
Yeah, and if they do fall off the cliff, it's just 8 doing an illusion. They're actually speeding on, and you're shooting off the cliff. And as far as like Dustin's immediate love for this creature, if I found a little weird lizard monster, and I was like, okay, here's some different things you might eat. Here's some regular chocolate. Here's some Three Musketeers with nougat. And I just look at it and I'm like, which one are you going to pick? And it goes to the nougat. I just shoot that thing in the head because it can't relate to human beings and what we need in our life. If that makes sense. If you eat nougat above other chocolate, maybe you need to go to the Upside Down because this is not your world.
You're just saying if you got a Hershey bar here and a Three Musketeers here, you're out of your mind for getting a Three Musketeers?
Similar to these breakfast issues, I have no idea what any of these fucking candy bars are, but they mention 8 times that it's nougat, so I know it's bad.
You don't like a Snickers bar?
There's nougat in Snickers?
Isn't there nougats?
Nerd.
Something. Isn't
What
there?
else happens? You research that while I read what happens in this episode.
Snickers has its nougat is on the bottom of the Snickers.
The
Then you
worst
got
part of the
caramel and-
Snickers.
all right, this is crazy. I guess I'm Team Dustin.
Okay. So, what else is happening? We're still getting flashbacks, as we mentioned in chapter 3 or episode 3, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and we see them break the rules. Now, is this when we have they had their fight?
Which?
No, sorry, I'm jumping ahead.
Yep, no fight. I guess. You meant the fight at the party with Nancy and
Yes.
yeah, that's happened.
That fight happened, but then to prove, because everyone's always like, lest we forget that Jonathan's a creeper. Because remember they had him snapping pictures in the woods last year, like such a tone deaf weird thing to do for a hero. But they redeem him because he takes the drunk girl home and he's a perfect gentleman.
True. I guess we should mention that when the other kids see Dart, they're like, "Oh yeah, that's a monster." And Will is like, he's heard this sound in the Upside Down in his illusions, or it's his fucking visions, his true sight. Why wasn't an episode called True Sight? That seems a given. But anyway, yeah, so they're like, let's kill it. And he's like, oh no. And because of Max opening the door, it escapes. And because they use warmth, yeah, we get it. Warmth is bad for the creature and it runs away.
Warmth. And I guess, yeah, they are trying to play up that Dustin thinks this is going to be his in with Max because, you know, both Dustin and Lucas have their eyes on Max. And, she's clearly more than just the object of their lust as these friggin' stupid men. She's a full character.
Yes.
But that's besides.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. I don't think even Dustin believes that deep down. I don't get the feeling that this is to impress the girl. I get the feeling that he falls in love with this creature instead because he doesn't have anything to do with Max. Well, that's in the future, but anyway, he's totally more focused on this creature, and it escapes, and then, you know, Will finds it. He gets another one of his visions, and now he's really in trouble because the big monster's coming for him, and it's going up his nose and his mouth and his eye holes and all over him.
And the great thing about that is, like, Bob gives him advice, but it's like awful advice. It's like really,
yeah,
because he does it and I like how they do this because it's a good subversion on. Like movies always do this shit. Like it's always you get someone gives you a speech or someone tells you a story of their life and it's going to help you later on. Mm-hmm. And it's played up in such a way you know that it's probably going to come back later. And he's being a nice guy because he was a nerd and he was picked on, and he's just giving you that advice that you tell kids. It's like, you know, you can stand up to what you're afraid of and you're going to show that thing that you're not afraid of it and you're going to win. Except this doesn't work when you keep accidentally flashing to an evil dimension with a giant like scorpion Lovecraft monster who, yes, is now all up in Will's shit, going to his eyes, his mouth, his ass, his dick hole, I imagine, his ears.
Yeah, off screen, but it happens. Being such a Bob fanboy as I am sure that if he actually, like, if Will or anyone told him any more details, he would have been like,
yes,
when you see that thing, you get the fuck out of there. Like, it's not his fault that it's such bad advice, but it is bad advice, and that's why I like it, because it makes sense for where he's at, and it even makes sense that Will, being tired and beaten down from running and everyone treating him like a freak, he's like, no, I'm going to stand my ground. I'm a little 10-year-old. And he just gets, he gets messed up real good. Real bad. Real good bad.
Yes.
And also, note...
the monster becomes like the lost smoke monster all of a sudden.
Yeah, which is, okay, we'll talk about that next time. But I did want to mention, this is one where actually, I didn't necessarily love it, but it makes total sense how they cut in Bob saying, you have to stop and stand and fight. While he's running away, they cut that in so that otherwise it would have been difficult for them to emote in his face while he's running, or that he's actually like thinking back to that. You would have him murmur to himself like, stand your ground. Like, it makes sense to cut it in because he's in the Upside Down too, so it's kind of difficult to show that stuff.
We're in Will's head with that. Will is specifically, so this isn't an example of what we were talking about that was bad.
Yeah,
because like you said, this is in the character's point of view. he's thinking of that and he's trying to, follow the instructions and face his fears.
Yes, exactly. So, but it goes wrong, which is, as you said, it's a nice subversion. And that does close out chapter 3, the first
Well,
third.
there's
Yes?
one other thing I wanted to call it that was bad and kind of set, uh, set the way I'm looking at the character of Max when
Yeah.
they ham-handed. They squish this stupid Max character in with Mike. They share no scenes together, but they just so happen to have a scene where they smile at each other when 11 shows up. And because I was even thinking, I was like, they better not do this. They better not do this. And then they fucking do it. And
Right.
this is what annoyed me, because if they had at least like this, the whole time, Mike's like, I hate Max. Get Max out of here. She's not part of the group. This is the worst.
Yes.
But then they just so happen to have one like little conversation where he's not, like the one time he's had kind of a smile, just so happens to be when 11 shows up. Now, if they want to do this love triangle, do the love triangle. But the thing is,
Yeah.
they don't, because they want to do the love triangle with Max and Dustin and Lucas. But they
Yeah.
want a quick moment here. And to me, that's when I'm like, all right, this is lazy. This is the stuff I don't like, because you're just shoving this character here to create this fake tension, and to like just space this out a bit more.
Right. So, two things on that. One is why you're right, and one is why you're wrong.
Okay.
So the reason why you're wrong, or not necessarily, well, yeah, you're wrong, because Steve.
Right. The reason why I'm less right.
The reason why you're less right is I just realized I can't say because it's a spoiler. But I'll formulate it differently by saying that if you don't pay attention to a girl and you're like, "Who's this stupid girl? Get this girl the fuck out
You're
of here."
talking about like the booze in Super Mario.
I'm talking about the boos in Super Mario, where if you turn your back on them, all they do is come at you. But if you're looking at these girls, they're never gonna face your way. They're never gonna look at you. So Mike is the only one of these 3 new cool kids who, or well, 4, but he's the only one who's of the right age. So he's kind of like. And I this is a kind of a gross term, but yeah, he's negging the fuck out of her, basically. So that's why her motivation makes sense. And the reason why you're right, though, is because it's such a fleeting moment. Like, this should have been the turning point where after this, he's like more all right with Max. And instead, he's just kind of like, the second it's over, she like falls over and he's like, this fucking bitch, I bet 11 did this, and like runs out looking for her. And then, yeah, I mean, what happens after, we're not going to go into, but I'll say it's not a big turning moment for them. They don't actually share a moment. So that's why it feels contrived, because 11 needs to see it.
You know what? You're right. If this did represent a turning point for these characters, I would have been way more forgiving. But yeah, it only serves this one purpose in this episode and doesn't mean much else from there.
Yeah, so that does cover the first 3 episodes. Now, if you are on the live stream watching this, we're just going to take a quick little break, and then we're going to come back right at you, because we're a fucking Netflix show all of a sudden. We're just going to binge you through our next episode discussing the next 3 of Stranger Things, and then we're going to later come back with the last, because I haven't fucking finished it yet. But yeah, so we're going to split it up like this to help you travel along with us on this journey into the stranger parts of life.
Yeah, make sure you subscribe on YouTube, subscribe to Shows What You Know on the podcast, and email us your thoughts on Stranger Things 2 at showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com. And yeah, like Jacob said, if you're in the live stream, we'll be right back. We're just going to take a quick break and come back and do episodes 4 through 6.
Yes, and if you are at all interested in Stranger Things, you do need to check out our Twitter, where Jim has been tweeting up a storm while watching this. All the retweets are coming our way because we're topical now for once. Good job, everyone. We're topical. Yay! It's going to last 3 days. See you soon, everyone.
See ya.